And joining me now with more, Harley Lippman, foreign policy and geopolitical analyst and founder of Genesis 10. Harley, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to have you. Now, Secretary Hegseth testified today that the military has spent about $37 billion on the war with Iran, but he downplayed Iran in his funding request, saying the budget ask is to meet a, quote, generational challenge. How are you reading this?
Yes, he bundled it somewhat by adding in salary increases for military personnel, recruitment, and other costs. But war costs money, and especially today, it's very expensive. It comes down to like anything when you're looking at a budget. Is it worth it? And if you feel that the threat from Iran is real and it endangers the United States and our allies, then this is what we have to pay to make sure that Iran doesn't have hegemony in the Middle East.
And expanding on that, it seems the U.S. military may be cutting funding from other areas to fund the Iran war. Is this concerning?
Well, it all depends on what they're doing with funding for the Iran war. I suspect they're focusing on new generation. To Secretary of War's defense, he pointed out that the Pentagon is now led by very sophisticated, successful businessmen and tech leaders, as well as people of merit who are looking at this as, and I pretty much quote him, as running it like a business, meaning they're looking for real tangible outcomes, real results. They're not running it as a bureaucracy. So I believe that they're investing a lot in the new age technology of warfare, which is mostly drone and missile warfare. And I think that's going to be the difference, along with AI, as to who will prevail on the battlefield in the future.
And Harley, this is the 11th consecutive night we are carrying out strikes against Iran. President Trump said today that the Iranians are, quote, desperately trying to talk, but the United States is not interested in talking until they believe Iran is negotiating in good faith. What do you expect to see going forward?
Well, there's no such thing as Iran negotiating in good faith. They look at negotiations tactically and strategically. In other words, not in terms of the Western sense of making an agreement, honoring the agreement, making compromises, which is what you do when, and I quote President Trump, if they're going to have meaningful negotiations. So we have to have no illusions that this is a ideological regime that is a dictatorship. It's a death cult. They worship martyrdom. They believe in jihad. They want to convert the world to the Muslim way of living and religion, and that's their own words. It's not propaganda. It's not warmongering. No nation in American history has ever been more obsessed with destroying the United States than Iran. So we have to take what they're saying very seriously. I would add that I think it's arrogance to think we know better what they mean than their own words. If they say they want to destroy America, believe them.
And given that, President Trump said today that the U.S. would, in fact, target Pickaxe Mountain, which is about a mile from where the U.S. bombed last year, taking out an Iranian nuclear site. Now, recent reports suggest that Iran has moved centrifuges there. Now, President Trump says he normally wouldn't telegraph military operations, but that at this point, Iran can't do anything about it. How much would you say we have degraded Iran's military capabilities?
Well, no one knows exactly. Certainly, we have significantly. I mean, just given the punishing effect of these air raids that have taken place day after day after day with our really good intel. Unless your boots on the ground in Iran, will you know? But we're degrading it dramatically. And in fact, what's interesting about President Trump's press conferences is for the first time he's using the words degrade their military effectiveness. He's not saying obliterate, destroying it completely. I think he's become aware that even when you're highly effective, nothing is 100%. Even if we destroyed them by 80, 90%, that could still leave hundreds, even thousands of missiles in their disposal. So he has to be careful about overpromising when I think legitimately he could claim tremendous tactical victories. A lot of people will argue that Iran is winning. But here's the question I have: how are they winning when they can't protect their own leaders, not only top leaders, but second tier and third tier leaders? How are they winning when they can't defend their country, when their air defenses are wiped out, their Navy, their Air Force? They're winning because you're looking at the lowest bar possible, which is they're surviving. So, and they're able to do damage by launching missiles into neighboring countries. But I would not describe that as winning. By fear, they're able to close the Strait of Hormuz, and so President Trump has finally taken the decision that it looks like we have to take the Strait of Hormuz, because you can't let Iran control the most important bottleneck in the world. 20% of the world's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz, as well as fertilizer, which Africa desperately needs and can't come any other way except through the Strait of Hormuz. So what he's doing is really a good thing for America and for the world.
And Harley, expanding on that, on Iran's side, the Houthis threatened recently to blockade the Red Sea, and two oil tankers carrying solid crude did have to reverse course in the Red Sea today. And President Trump said if something like that happens, we take care of it. Do you think we'll see the scope of this conflict expand now?
Probably, but I think that's actually a positive outcome, because if you don't finish the job, if you will, and have regime change, this will go on forever, tit for tat. They will continually try to make sure they have control of the Strait of Hormuz. They've discovered that they have strategic leverage, which is actually more important to them than nuclear weapons. So they are going to do everything possible, because having control of the Strait of Hormuz not only gives them tremendous control with all their Arab neighbors, but it also gives them an unusual level of influence, leverage, and control over the whole world, because the world depends on the freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. And if Iran controls it and makes money on it by charging tolls, that is a victory for Iran. So the United States has to make sure that that doesn't happen. Because if they do control the Strait of Hormuz, you've now created a terrible precedent where there are other choke points in the world: the Straits of Gibraltar, the Malacca Straits in Indonesia. We're already seeing the Houthis closing Mandeb al Bab, another choke point. This speaks to freedom of navigation. These are open waterways. You can't let any country control it. And the United States has gone to war twice over that historically. The War of 1812, when the British would seize U.S. ships and we didn't have freedom of navigation. And World War I, when German submarines were conducting unrestricted warfare, torpedoing American civilian liners. And the United States went to war over that. So freedom of navigation is critical for the world, and the United States has taken a leadership role. But the countries that are affected most by it are actually Asia and Africa, and that's why these countries should join in this effort with the United States. The United States could at some point perhaps offload it and outsource it to the nations that use the Strait of Hormuz, because the United States really doesn't need it very much.
A lot at stake for sure. Harley Lippman, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.